Hello, dear friends. Today we head out on a fascinating journey to the ancient site of Tel Beersheba and Abraham's well. This Tel is located just outside the city of Beersheba in Israel. Although other biblical sites in Israel are often overrun with tourists and pilgrim groups, this one isn't. And yet, this site marks one of the most important sites in our faith, because here is where the patriarchs of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob lived and transformed our lives today. Are you ready? Okay, let's dive in. Beersheba is a tell, and if you remember from our episode on Tel Megiddo, a tell is essentially an artificial mound formed from layer upon layer of multiple civilizations built upon one another, gradually creating a hill. And this is exactly what Tel Beersheba is. This site was excavated from 1969 to 1976 by the Tel Aviv University Institute of Archaeology. Much of the site was then excavated to discover Beersheba's oldest settlements, uncovering 4 ancient layers. Then from 1993 to 1995, more excavation revealed the town's very ancient water system. Now, look out across Beersheba. It's a city cleverly crafted with distinct areas for governance and living. Underneath the streets, we discover ancient drains and cisterns weaving through the foundations, ensuring survival in the desert. Houses that merge with the city's defenses hint at a community ready to protect their oasis, blending everyday life with a strategic plan to protect against marauders. As you look out, imagine walking among the estimated 350 souls who once called the strategic marvel their home. In addition to Abraham, Isaac returned here, and Jacob too found his way back for a time. It became their homeland, as the sacred ground where they pitched their tents. Here, where we stand, is where the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob once lived, weaving the fabric of their very lives into the very soil of this land. The name of Beersheba can mean well of oath or well of 7 lambs. And that certainly ties into the biblical story that I'll share with you in just a bit. Even though it was a desolate wilderness when Abraham first arrived, it ultimately flourished into a prominent city. Beersheba was no ordinary city. It was the guardian of the south, a key stronghold during the golden era of David, Solomon, and the kings that followed. Beersheba stood as a marker to the furthest reaches of their realm, marking the line between where their kingdom met the untamed expanse of wilderness. When you're in Beersheba, you're standing at a place of biblical history where power, culture, and the wild unknown converge. One of the most significant discoveries at Tel Beersheba is that of a horned altar, the first ever unearthed in Israel. Altars with horns at each of their 4 corners are mentioned frequently in the Bible. And many scholars believe that this very horned altar was from the time of King Hezekiah, when he tore down the pagan altars that the Israelites had been worshiping at. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. He removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He broke into pieces the bronze snake Moses had made, for up to that time the Israelites had been burning incense to it. Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. He held fast to the Lord and did not stop following him. He kept the commands the Lord had given Moses. Now let's go back well before Beersheba was the stronghold during David's or Solomon's reign, when it was the center of power and influence, just as the modern city of Beersheba is today. So picture this. Here's Abraham in Ur of Mesopotamia, and this is a wealthy, cultured, and urban area at the time. And so is Abraham. Then, suddenly God gives him a divine command. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." So Abram, as he's called out at that time, packs up his belongings. He leaves his comfort zone. He leaves his family, his wealth, his career, and he comes here. And I wonder if he looked around and wondered, did I really hear God's voice? Now imagine stepping into the vast, uncharted wilderness of the desert, much like Abraham did thousands of years ago. Look around. As you can see, it is not exactly an area filled with greenery or easy resources thousands of years ago. Picture this. When Abraham made his way to this expanse, Beersheba wasn't even on a map. It was a barren canvas of sand and sky. And while today they make TV shows like Survivor out of scenarios like this, except Abraham had no camera crew, he had no water faucet, and he had no helicopter waiting to take him back to comfort. Plus, he had his family to care for, and he had to learn a whole new way of life that he hadn't been prepared for. Yet, there in the heart of the Negev desert, a place of merciless heat and unrelenting sun, he stepped forward in faith and willingly embraced a new life, and God blessed him as he had promised. "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." From a well-established figure in the bustling cities of urban civilization, in order to be obedient to God's call, he transformed into a shepherd, tending to his flock under the open sky. And this was a monumental leap of faith, leaving behind everything familiar for the unknown wilderness. God gave Abraham a promise of a land stretching from the far reaches of the north to the heart of the south. And this was more than a mere boundary. It was a symbol of hope and destiny. Beersheba grew to be the southern cornerstone of the Israelite kingdoms during the era of the First Temple, which was a testament to the fulfillment of that ancient promise from God. The Bible often describes the land stretching from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. Here at Beersheba, we stand at the southern edge of these ancient boundaries. Now, kingdoms back then didn't have a clear-cut line or border patrols like we have today between countries. And after all, maps, yes, even paper maps as we know them, didn't exist back then. And no one pulled out their phones to check Google Maps back then. So the easy way to describe the kingdom was to say that Dan served as the northern marker and Beersheba as the southern marker. So here we are at the southern marker of the promised land. And so many biblical events took place here. And to help us visualize one of the major biblical events that happened here, let's step over to Abraham's well. Now, water, as we know, is essential to survive anywhere, but especially in the desert. It's not easy for most of us to understand because we just turn on the faucet and out comes water. This well reaches a depth of 70 meters, directly accessing the underground water supply. Now, back in ancient times, to destroy or steal a well in the desert was worth starting a war over. And a war almost began here for those same reasons between Abraham and Abimelech. This well, known as Abraham's well, was taken over by one of Abraham's enemies, Abimelech. It was here that Abraham formed a covenant of peace with Abimelech. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, said to Abraham, "God is with you in everything you do. Now swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Show to me and the country where you now reside as a foreigner the same kindness I have shown to you." Abraham said, "I swear it." Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. But Abimelech said, "I don't know who has done this. You did not tell me, and I heard about it only today." So Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 ewe lambs from the flock, and Abimelech asked Abraham, "What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs you have set apart by themselves?" He replied, "Accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well." So that place was called Beersheba, because the 2 men swore an oath there. And then in verse 33, to take this oath one step further, we see that Abraham planted a tamarisk tree. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. Now, why in the world would Abraham plant a tamarisk tree to follow up on an oath? Well, there's more to this story. Let's take a look. The tamarisk tree can take nearly 400 years to fully grow. The tree's foliage captures moisture from the air during the night, and during the day, this moisture evaporates, creating a cooling effect, which is a true gift in the desert sun. When grown, it offers shade and food, and the fruit even has medicinal qualities. So now, fast forward about 400 years, and let's guess who might actually need what this tree provides. Well, it's Abraham's own descendants, traveling through the desert after leaving Egypt, on their way to the land God promised to Abraham. They'd be looking for shade, for food, and healing medicines. Everything that the tamarisk tree planted so long ago by Abraham could now give them. So Abraham is not planting a tamarisk tree for his own benefit, but for generations to come. The tamarisk tree that Abraham plants here in Beersheba is a lesson to all of us to focus our lives not just on ourselves, but to future generations. And this reminds us of the verse in Psalm chapter 78, verse 4. We will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power, and the wonders He has done. As we wrap up this virtual tour of Beersheba, let's remember the faith of Abraham, that when God called him to go from the comfortable and the familiar to the uncomfortable and the unfamiliar, he stepped out in faith and he moved forward, and God blessed him. This is a challenge and an encouragement to all of us. So let's also remember the promises of God given to Abraham, even though he would never see them fully fulfilled in his lifetime. And he brought him outside and said, "Look toward heaven and number the stars, if you are able to number them." Then he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. Until our next virtual tour of the Holy Land, I pray that just like Abraham, may you live in trust for the fulfillment of God's promises for you. And may you be willing to step out in faith when God calls you from the uncomfortable and the familiar to the uncomfortable and the unfamiliar. And please remember, God is always with you. He will never, ever abandon you.